And welcome to Salon Talks. I'm very happy to welcome back our friend Mary Trump, activist, author of the best-selling book, Too Much and Never Enough, How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man. She has the podcast, The Mary Trump Show. On YouTube, it's The Nerd Avengers, and also her Substack newsletter, The Good in Us, by Mary L. Trump, which I subscribe to. It's a great publication. My friend Mary, nice to see you.
Hey, Dean, it's great to see you too.
So let's talk about what's going on. All things 2024 race is upon us. Donald Trump leading by far. But I get your reaction. As someone who knew Trump for years and interacted with him, what do you think his real reaction was to being indicted on 34 felonies? Like, how do you think he took that intellectually, emotionally, when he was alone in a room?
Badly? Yeah, listen, I think it's something that intellectually Donald could never have possibly imagined, because why would he? You know, past his prologue, he's never been held accountable for anything. He's gotten away with so much wrongdoing and so much alleged criminality that there was literally no reason for him to think that anything would ever catch up with him. I mean, it's been 76 years. So I don't understand why anybody for a second bought into his false bravado about how he was going to face the fact that he'd be suffering the deep humiliation of being arrested, fingerprinted, and all of those other things that happen, being in a courtroom at the whim of a judge, having absolutely no power or control over the situation you find yourself in, having a door slammed in your face because for the first time in your life, somebody didn't hold the door for you. You know, so we can't overstate how humiliating that situation was. And for Donald Trump, the absolute worst thing he can feel is humiliation. So it was a bad day for him and a good day for the rest of us.
It was a step in the right direction. We've talked about accountability for Donald Trump for years. But what is your reaction?
A small step, but a step nonetheless.
Right. A small step for mankind, but that kind of Neil Armstrong on the moon type of thing, almost as heavy of a lift. But what is your reaction? We are 2 years and about 3 months since the January 6th attack that was a Donald J. Trump production and the coup. And DOJ, all we hear is that Jack Smith special counsel seems to be robustly investigating, but it's expanding investigation. What's your reaction that it's been this long? And what's the message sent by DOJ that they still not charged Donald Trump in 2 years and 3.5 months?
It's infuriating. It should worry all of us that the people in places of power who actually can do something about fixing this country and saving American democracy don't seem to understand the threat facing us. And no matter what happens, listen, hopefully Jack Smith will get the evidence he needs to indict the right people, and hopefully Merrick Garland will see the wisdom in letting that happen and allow things to play out, right? Even if that happens, though, historians will look at Merrick Garland's unwillingness to act in a timely fashion as a massive failure. If, however, we don't succeed in holding those people accountable, and we are not able to hang on to the American experiment, I think Merrick Garland will go down in history as the person who most failed America.
Do you think Merrick Garland's failure to charge Trump promptly, and there's no doubt he didn't charge him promptly, that it's helped normalize Donald Trump?
It's been quite the spectacle to see both Merrick Garland and the media do everything in their power to continue normalizing this man, even when it became clear that to do so would to endanger us further. So there's no explanation for what's going on that I'm aware of that makes sense. So yes, it has listen, he is not just running to be the Republican candidate for president, he is the Republican candidate for president. That's insane. We have active seditionists continuing to serve in our government. That's insane. If our system is incapable of protecting itself from those who seek to dismantle it, what's the point of the system in the first place?
It's an interesting question, and I know it's rhetorical. This is the world we live in right now, and you've got Donald Trump leading far and away the GOP nomination. But on some level, isn't he the perfectly sums up this GOP? A movement that's embraced violence, white supremacy, cruelty, bigotry, hate, and now is imposing their religion as law. And regardless that Trump himself is not religious, he made this possible by appointing 3 Supreme Court justices who are the ones who overturned Roe v. Wade and the judges who overturned the abortion pill. It's all him.
On religious grounds. Dean, you and I have been saying this, or some version of this, for a really long time. Donald Trump didn't change the Republican Party. He just revealed the Republican Party. The one unique thing he did do was give them permission to be their worst selves. And they're not disappointing, are they? They have shown us exactly who they are and the lengths they will go to impose their Christian nationalism, their white supremacy, and their tyranny of the minority. Which is, again, why, against that backdrop, I'm still mystified that people in power, whether at the DOJ or in the Democratic Party, aren't running around with their hair on fire.
And why are Democrats? I mean, let's be honest. This is, on CNN recently, Congressman Jamal Bowman from the Bronx, who's a great guy, speaks bluntly, doesn't hold back, was on with Congressman Luke Donalds from Florida, big-time Trump supporter. And Donalds was talking about how he's endorsing Trump. And on air, to his face, he said, "You are endorsing an insurrectionist." And Donald's like, "That's not true." And then Bowman laid out the receipts. This is the guy who told everyone to come here on January 6th, told him to be wild. He even wanted to get in the car and drive down there. This is the guy that caused the first attack on our capital since the British in the War of 1812. Why don't we hear other Democrats doing that and saying this kind of stuff?
Well, it's a really good question. And, the other thing about Donald's response is that at this point, he isn't wrong. Because nobody's been charged with, nobody who planned and incited the insurrection has been charged. So you can get away at this point with saying that Donald's not an insurrectionist because he hasn't been proven to be one by the powers that be. So that's disturbing enough. And that does, adds to the normalization. And can Congressman Bowman give seminars to Democrats about how to handle, these people are liars, they're bullies, and they're anti-democratic, pro-autocratic fascists. So why is it so difficult to summon the courage to say that out loud in a way that is as blunt as Congressman Bowman? It's mystifying.
It is. And, the media coverage of Donald Trump like a normal candidate is so helpful. They're showing these are how many people have endorsed him, as opposed to the rise of fascism. Look how many Republicans are endorsing him. There's a CBS poll from last year, which I tried to cite a lot, and I may even discuss it with you, but I haven't done it on Salon yet, so I want to discuss it. There's a poll in June. 51% of Republicans view January 6th not as terrorism, but as an act of patriotism. That is up 4% from 6 months before that. The trajectory is to further embrace January 6th, not to reject it as Antifa, but to say it was ours and we are proud of it. It is patriotism. And it's furthered by Donald Trump saying the January 6th terrorists who attacked our Capitol are being treated unfairly and he's going to pardon them. And again, my frustration is it's not about politics. It's about keeping this democratic republic. Do you share the concerns that this is an existential threat to the democratic republic that we believe in?
It's been an existential threat since 2016. And I never thought say, after the election was called for President Biden in November 2020, I never thought that I would be saying 3 years later that this country is in worse shape now than it was then. But it is again down to the fact that Donald was allowed to run as a normal candidate in 2020, despite the fact that he'd been impeached twice. And he had tanked the American economy. And to that point, he was directly responsible for the deaths of over 250,000 Americans. Okay, so I guess what's an insurrection? Like, why is that such a big deal? So here we are, and the danger simply increases because the longer these lies go unchallenged, the more it becomes part of their narrative, right? People start to believe that the big lie. People start to believe that the insurrectionists were actually true patriots because Biden stole the election. And here we are. It's like it's not even mentioned when they're talking about Donald and his, his style on the campaign trail. His crimes against this country, against the Constitution, and against the American people aren't even mentioned.
It is intellectually difficult at times to see what's going on and not just start screaming about, well, why do you guys not read history? Do you have no idea? Look, we demanded accountability for Osama bin Laden and bring him to justice. And I'm not comparing 9/11 January 6th, but they were domestic terrorist attacks on our soil. They were domestic attacks. They occurred here. But there's no doubt January 6th was an act of domestic terrorism because the FBI director, Christopher Wray, testified that's how they view it. We didn't stop demanding accountability for bin Laden because we knew if you don't hold him accountable, he will wage the same attacks over and over and over again. And he tried to. I don't understand why that same mindset doesn't work, even for a lot of Democrats in the grassroots, and why Democratic members of Congress, because you and me and our friends call for accountability for Trump. But it seems like some Democrats have just sort of moved on as well. Like, well, let's talk about other issues.
Well, the same thing with COVID. It's just, well, people are tired of it. Really? Maybe you're not explaining to them properly. Maybe there's something missing in the narrative about these things. And I think for Democrats to approach this politically and to deal with Republicans as if they're honest brokers is a huge mistake. First of all, neither thing is true. This isn't about politics. This is about the future of the country. Secondly, making common cause with Republicans at this point is to make common cause with fascists. You do not negotiate with hostage takers, which is what they also are. If you think about the debt ceiling,
I get to that. Yep.
Sanity, and they are literally trying to impose a Christian nationalist minority rule on a country that rejects, like vast majorities of American people reject most of the Republican Party's agenda, but they don't care because they've got gerrymandering, they've got the Electoral College, and they've got the most corrupt Supreme Court potentially ever, but certainly in modern history.
Clarence Thomas is redefining corruption. Yep. I mean, it's something we've never seen.
So is Chief Justice John Roberts by refusing to do anything. True. And so is Dick Durbin, who really needs to be replaced immediately, along with, well, let's not go there. But Dick Durbin is not up to this task either.
And he's the Democratic senator, is the chair of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate. Yeah. If Donald Trump ends up getting charged in Fulton County, let's say, and DOJ, and he understands the only potential way to stay out of prison in his own thinking, even without academically going through this, is to win this election in 2024. What do you think he's capable of, and how dangerous has he become?
Every day he's allowed to roam free, he gets more dangerous. He gets more, not unhinged. I mean, he's never been hinged, but as the stakes get higher for him, they get higher for us, because he will reveal to people who, for some bizarre reason, don't believe it yet, that he's capable of anything, that there is no bottom, and there is nothing at which he will stop to either to get his way, or if he ever gets to the point where he feels like he's going down, he will bring all of us down with him. There is no arguing that point. And so in some ways, it's not just about the election or the future of democracy. It's also about safety. Like, nobody's safe as long as Donald has the power that he continues to be allowed to have, because the Republican Party is afraid of his base.
Have you had conversation with friends, and I will share that I have, who have, again, recently, after stopping for a while, have talked about exploring dual citizenship if they're eligible in other countries? Is that something?
I mean, it's more of my friends are exploring that option than not, which should tell us something, especially friends who are in communities that don't have a lot of representation, my Jewish friends, my friends in the LGBTQ plus community, anybody who's basically not a straight white Christian Republican at this point has every reason to be deeply concerned about what happens in 2024. I don't think I would be able to stay here.
It could be, I mean, because it's personal with him and you. I mean, from his point of view towards you, we know that. So, I mean, when you were writing your book, your bestseller, it was a great book, Too Much and Never Enough, How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man. And that was like 2018, 2019, if I remember correctly.
It was published in July 2020. It just seems like it was 700 years
Wow,
ago.
2020. It seems like a long time ago. Well, look, when you were writing that book, did you think this many years later we would still be talking about him? Did you? And when I recall the book, I looked at my notes of the book, on a lot of it was about your father who passed away, and the cruelty, though, of the grandfather, your grandfather, the father of Donald, and your father. It wasn't as Donald as a monster as much. There was actually even some humanity to him in the book, the way you painted, because you knew him and we're friendly at one point and worked together. As we're seeing now, I mean, did you think it could get this bad? I mean, he's leader of a fascist movement on U.S. soil.
At first I didn't, because I didn't understand how far the Republican Party would be willing to go to accommodate Donald and then enable him. Right. But I still hung on to hope that if Biden won, there would be a shift. Like I thought, maybe I can write novels now. Clearly this is not where we are. It's
remarkable. You mentioned the debt ceiling here. A couple more questions with my friend Mary Trump. So Mary, you mentioned the debt ceiling. I had Congressman Mark Pocan on, really good guy, about a month ago, who said something actually was jaw-dropping, because he said very calmly, I go, you think Republicans will work out a deal on debt ceiling? He goes, no, they want it to default because they want to hurt President Biden. And he goes, they'll probably let it hurt for a little while, and then they'll get enough pressure from Wall Street Republicans, whatever, to make a deal. What do you think? Do you think that they're going to, on purpose, hurt the economy so it hurts Biden for 2024?
These people who serve in our government hate our government. They care for nothing except raw power. And in order to get power, they have to undermine the Democrats and President Biden at every single opportunity, right? And a lot of them are deeply stupid people. Like, they don't understand that a constitutional republic is a form of democracy. For example, I personally think that somebody representing this country should know what kind of government we have. They either don't know or don't care the devastating consequences of defaulting on our debt. Even if it's for 5 minutes,
right?
It has massive implications that are global. And again, I think most of them don't know or don't care. So I think the only hope we have is we get a handful of somewhat sane, to the extent that that's even a thing anymore, Republicans in the House who just are unwilling to go that far.
And look at Jim Jordan. I mean, the guy is chair of the House Judiciary Committee. He came here to New York, where we live, to have his dog and pony show, just in the fear in the election of Donald Trump, to the prosecution of Donald Trump. It's no longer an investigation. It's a criminal criminal prosecution. And January 6th committee lays out that Jim Jordan was the most active member of Congress involved. They call him a significant player in the effort to overturn the election. Again, does this go back to DOJ and that he's emboldened by the fact that he's not even rumored or whispered to be being investigated?
Yeah. And honestly, like, I don't know enough about how our government works to know what steps Democrats could have taken. But they at least should have been highlighting the issue and pointing out at every turn. And I think that's one area that the January 6th committee fell down. And that's very possibly because Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger didn't allow certain avenues to be explored. I don't know. But the fact that Republicans who actively participated in planning, inciting, and carrying out the insurrection weren't name checked every day from January 7th on.
I'll tell you, when I spoke to members of Congress, they would tell me, even off the record, and now we can share because it's a year and a half later, I won't say names, but the Democratic leadership had made a choice. let's not focus on January 6th. Let's focus on a vision forward on policy. At the time, we were in the midst of COVID. Don't forget when they came in. So it actually made sense. Right now, we go like, how could you have done that? But they're like, let's deliver on COVID. Americans suffering. Americans are dying. DOJ will do whatever they're going to do. And in retrospect, it was a horrific mistake. But living through at the time, again, Joe Biden took office, thousands of people a day were dying from COVID. The economy, unemployment was at around 7%. We were still struggling really badly.
Right. In January 2021, 5,000 Americans were dying every day. So it is understandable. If you think about what he inherited, it's extraordinary what he's been able to accomplish. That's not an excuse, though, for Democrats in Congress not to see what their colleagues were up to when. How long did it take for the Republicans in Congress, who were as much victims as anybody else that day, to turn around and start saying that either it was somebody else like Antifa or Black Lives Matter who carried out the insurrection, or it was just a peaceful protest or of regular tourists or something? I mean, that they let that slide may turn out to be one of the biggest mistakes ever made in American history.
Based on our knowledge of Republicans and Fox News and everything, if a Democratic president did exactly what Donald Trump did, and a Republican AG came into power, or the Republican president, weeks later, do you think 2 years and over 100 days later, we'd be talking about why haven't they charged? How come those Republicans haven't charged that former Democratic president yet?
Dean, even if a Republican president picked a Democratic AG, the Democratic president who had incited an insurrection would have been in prison like within 5 minutes. Like, it's just, it's stunning. See, I'm speechless. Like, I don't even know what to say about it anymore, because it's not like any of it should have surprised us. Of course he was capable of that kind of thing. As soon as he realized that he was going to lose, we should have, like a lot of us were saying, it is going to get so much worse. And it did. And everybody's like, whoa, didn't see that coming. Why? And then, which is bad enough, but then for the thing to have happened and for it to go unpunished, except for, the people who actually participated that day, which, by the way, is great, and they should be held accountable, but it's not going to help us. It's not going to help us if the real power players are still free to either to incite another insurrection in the event Biden wins in 2024, or even more frightening, I think, just make sure that Biden loses.
If they had arrested, like you were suggesting, Trump shortly after leaving the White House, or even on lesser charges, like inciting a riot, they went to a grand jury and got an indictment and started there, everything would be different in this country. He never would have been a candidate now. His trial would have happened already. And they would have done one indictment, then superseding indictments, add further charges going forward. And that would have sent a swift message. You can't do this. And the reverse is, you can do this and get away with it. Last thing, if somehow Donald Trump ends up not being around to run, we don't know, life, things happen. When you look at Ron DeSantis, what's your feeling about him? Because at one point, he is more dangerous than Donald in certain ways, but he is lacking in so many qualities. The more we watch him, the more inept and unimpressive this guy gets. But deep down, it's still concerning.
Yeah, look, poor little meatball. But he's not somebody that we can dismiss entirely. I also just want to say something really quickly. You and I didn't even talk about the thousands of classified documents Donald stole. So that's another thing that just, it's getting swept under the rug. But Ron DeSantis is an incredibly dangerous politician. He's basically turning Florida into a closed fascist state. And the only good news is that I don't believe for a second that he could succeed nationally. I don't want to leave anything to chance, though. He certainly isn't going to, well, I think that if he announces a candidacy for 2024, he's stupider than I thought. It would be, I hope he does, because it would basically destroy his political future, which is already in doubt, quite honestly. But, as long as Donald is leading and has the power, no Republican is safe running against him. I don't know why anybody has as much hubris as to think that they can escape the onslaught that Donald is going to unleash on them. But we'll see. I'm more worried that Florida is a test case for other states, and that DeSantis is drawing a roadmap for other states to follow. So, we might get to the point where there are so many Republican-led states who have supermajorities in the legislature that what happens nationally won't really matter as much anymore.
And that's very true. And they are turning their state legislatures into incubators for fascism and for religious supremacy. I call it religious fascism, Christian nationalism technically, but a Democrat will never use the word Christian nationalism. Members of Congress, I know that. But Mary, look, let's hope brighter days are coming. We're going to keep fighting. That's what we do. And by the way, Mary Trump's going on the road. So where do people go? What's the website they can go to? They find out about you're doing live appearances. You're going to be on the road with the Nerd Adventures, leading them.
Yeah, I think it's politicon.com/Mary Trump Show. It's May 7th in Chicago, May 9th in San Francisco, May 10th in Portland, and May 16th in our hometown, New York City.
Catch Mary Trump on the road. Well, thank you, Mary. Thanks so much for being on Salon Talks. It's always great chatting with you, my friend.
Thanks, Dean. It's so great to see you.
Have a great day.